You could have bought this house in 1930 for $3,000, and today that same house costs well over $300,000. This phenomenon is known as inflation, and it doesn't just happen with real estate. Although today a $1 hamburger from McDonald's seems like a great deal, the reality is just about 70 years ago, that same hamburger made from even more fresh, locally sourced ingredients would have only cost 15 cents. You've probably heard of the terms inflation and deflation, but what does it really mean and how does it happen? And best of all, how can we profit from it? Welcome back to WallStreet Wealthy. My name is SP Warren, and today we're going to learn all about inflation and deflation.
Simply put, inflation is the increase in prices of goods and services throughout an economy, and deflation is the decrease in purchasing power or the strengthening of the dollar.
But if we dive a little more into this topic, we can learn far more than meets the eye. To understand how currencies fluctuate in value, we must start off by understanding what gives currencies their value. The United States, along with most foreign countries, base the value of their money on the gold standard.
This had meant you could walk up to the bank, hand them a $20 bill, and in exchange you would receive 1 ounce of gold. Under the gold standard, if a country's currency became too weak compared to the US dollar, that country would buy back its currency from foreign exchange markets. This was an effective way to control prices, because lower quantity supply means higher price demand.
This system effectively kept the government from overspending and inflation in check. Since the United States owned 3/4 of the global gold supply, this meant that other countries did not have enough gold to base their currency on the gold standard. This gave birth to the Bretton Woods Agreement, an international monetary policy where countries agreed their central banks would maintain a fixed exchange rate between their currency and the US dollar.
The system worked well until the US economy was hit with the Great Depression of 1929.
During this era, the collapse of the financial sector, combined with an increased production of goods, led to a deflationary period where supply was far greater than demand. This naturally caused the prices to fall.
Although in 1929, prices were marked down as an incentive to consumers, this had quite the opposite effect. As prices went down, consumers tend to shop even less, hoping to snag a better deal in the future. This cycle kept on repeating until 1933, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt was left with no other option than to resort to deficit spending. Executive Order 6102 allowed President Franklin D. Roosevelt to disregard the gold standard and pump money into the US economy. This successfully lowered interest rates and led to the relatively quick recovery out of the Great Depression.
Quick side note, after the Great Depression, the greatest amount of money printed to avoid an economic collapse is actually right now during the post-pandemic era. It's estimated the US Federal Reserve printed over $3.5 trillion to avoid an economic collapse. Some economists say this might lead to hyperinflation. Although printing money was a great way to escape the tragedies of the Great Depression, this brought forth a whole new issue. The US government had printed so much money that it lacked the gold to hold as collateral.
One by one, the foreign countries started to exchange their US dollars back for gold, and this had started putting a sizable dent in the US gold reserves. To prevent foreign countries from leaching gold out of the US Treasury, President Richard Nixon decided to abolish the gold standard in 1971.
This means that the US dollar is no longer backed by anything. It became what we call now fiat currency.
So the United States government started pumping more and more money into the US economy. As the quantity of dollars increased, the value of each dollar decreased.
WallStreet Wealthy Tip number 1. As a hedge against the US dollar, invest in assets with a solid stock-to-flow ratio model. Examples are gold and Bitcoin. WallStreet Wealthy Tip number 2. if you're expecting a period of inflation up ahead, get a fixed interest rate loan from the bank. Use this money to buy a cash flowing asset that covers the debt and the monthly payments of this asset. This effectively means your ROI will be the rate of inflation. By not using your own money prior to the inflationary period, you're actually paying back the loan with the less valuable dollars. Wall Street Wealthy tip number 3. At its core, inflation means prices going up. So if you're planning to invest in traditional markets, make sure to invest in commodities like oil, which tend to do far better during periods of hyperinflation. I hope I was able to add some value to your day. Thank you for watching. My name is SP Warren, and I'll see you next time on Wall Street Wealthy.